Welcome to Lair the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, I wanted to discuss AC/DC. We have a new AC/DC album as of the filming of this video. It will be out on November 13th, Friday, November 13th here in the States. And I thought it would be fun for the 2 Fridays leading up to it to talk about the last 2 studio AC/DC albums before their new one comes out. The new one's called Power Up. For me, so we're going to start with 2008's Black Ice. For me, this was kind of a renaissance for AC/DC, at least for me personally. I was a huge AC/DC fan when I was younger. They were the band that got me into hard rock and heavy metal. They were my band. Started with Back in Black, and I followed them pretty much through the Razor's Edge. But then I sort of lost track of what they were doing. I liked Ball Breaker. I like Stiff Upper Lip. But for me, they're good. They're not great. I did a video very early on in my channel in defense of Flick of the Switch. Or I said for me that was the last 10 out of 10 AC/DC album. I know some people would say Razor's Edge because it had so many hits. But for me, after Flick of the Switch, something seemed to happen to Brian Johnson's voice. His voice wasn't quite the same. Fly on the Wall, I did like that, probably more than the average person, but it was definitely a step down, as was Blow Up Your Video, and then even Razor's Edge. By the time Razor's Edge came around, I like that album, but it just wasn't the same for me anymore. So when Black Ice came out, it had been 8 years since Stiff Upper Lip, so there was a lot of press and people talking about the new AC/DC album, and I got it the night it came out. I remember they had a Walmart exclusive, which I hate when bands do exclusives with big box stores. That can be a topic for another video. But anyways, I remember going out the night that it came out and getting it, and for me, it felt like kind of a return to form for AC/DC. Right out of the gates, the first thing I noticed is that I thought Brian Johnson's voice sounded really good, and maybe not quite at the level he was on Back in Black or For Those About to Rock, but for me it was much better than anything he's done, Fly on the Wall and on. It was his voice. I don't know what happened, what he did. It was a lifestyle change or what. His voice to me sounds great on this record, and that was the first thing that I noticed. The album is produced by Brendan O'Brien. And the production for me is it's a little harsh and overcompressed. You hear me talk about this all this time on the channel. What they basically did was they sort of squashed the dynamics so they can make the whole thing loud. So it's a little bit harsh on the ears, which is kind of a bummer. I think it's a little easier on the ears, the vinyl version of it. Honestly, I never listened to the CD because it's just too harsh on my ears. And at the time when this came out, I bought both the CD and the vinyl because I'm such a big AC/DC fan. So the production was a little bit of a bummer, a little bit of a letdown for me. It was a little too bright and a little too harsh. But, overall, it was still okay. You could hear all the guitars. And I like on this record, there's a lot of nice guitar interplay here with Angus and Malcolm, and sometimes there's even like a third guitar, which is very odd for AC/DC. Usually it's just guitar, left and right channel, bam, and when there's a guitar solo, the guitar solo is in the middle. But here there's actually some little guitar parts that come in and out of a lot of these songs, which I think is really cool, and I don't know if that was the influence of Brendan O'Brien. The other problem I have with this, one of the other things I don't like about this album, and this is something that really plagued AC/DC for the last so many records before this, and really ever since Flick of the Switch. Fly on the Wall and Forward, there just seem to be the lyrics sometimes they're just silly. And hey, I've mentioned this before in other AC/DC videos. AC/DC was never Shakespeare, but the lyrics were always clever and fun and cool song titles and everything. And on this album, there's way too many songs that have the word rock and roll in them. I mean, the first song on the album, Rock and Roll Train. In the chorus of the song, they're singing Runaway Train ran right off the tracks, but they call the song Rock and Roll Train. It's like, what? And to me, it's just, it takes away a little bit from, I miss that about AC/DC, these cool song titles like For Those About to Rock or Evil Walks or Walk All Over You. The Bon Scott era was full of great, cool lyrics and song titles, and then just something happened. I think that Angus and Malcolm took over a lot of the songwriting chores, so I'm guessing that's what's to blame for that. So the album starts with Rock and Roll Train. This was the big single. This is a great AC/DC song. Super catchy. It's just great. It's cool riffs in it. Big, huge, catchy chorus. Brian sounds great on it. I should mention the band. It's the classic, Brian Johnson era AC/DC lineup of course, Brian Johnson on vocals, Angus on guitar, Malcolm on guitar. Sadly, Malcolm would get sick not too long after this, suffer from dementia, and then pass away. Phil Rudd, Cliff Williams. Phil Rudd on drums and Cliff Williams on bass. Shout out to Cliff Williams, a very underrated bass player. I think that his bass actually sounds really good on this record. You can hear a lot of his bass lines. Like, for instance, in I believe it's the next song on the record, Skies on Fire. He has some really cool, little bass lines in there, which is really, really awesome. Skies on Fire is a cool one. Big Jack is kind of fun. I think that was one that they played live on this tour. I really like Anything Goes. I think that in the Brian Johnson era, especially the later era Brian Johnson stuff, I think that this is a sound that they're doing really well. These sort of fun, short, melodic rock tunes. You could go back maybe to Money Talks, that kind of vibe. With the next album, Play Ball, that song, the same kind of vibe. It's just a short, fun, catchy, melodic song, and they seem to do that type of thing really good here in this later part of AC/DC's career. So Anything Goes. It's a fun song. I love the chorus in it. War Machine is cool. I like the background vocals. War Machine, with this sort of classic AC/DC TNT style background vocals. Wheels is another fun one with a great chorus. Decibel has this cool, kind of funky, bluesy groove to it. Stormy May Days, another really neat one. And I think it's on this one. I meant to look this up before I did the video. I forgot. Where I think he plays slide guitar on this, which is Angus does, which is something that you don't hear a lot. Really, I'm trying to think. I don't think he's ever played slide guitar before. And I think it's on this song. You can correct me in the comments if you're right, or I'll look it up and put it down below. Yeah, so, and Angus has a lot of really nice, really great solos on here. He's sort of reached a point where he doesn't play a lot of, not that he was ever a technical guitar player, but he sort of settled it into just this really nice bluesy, great bends and vibrato, and just sort of that classic Angus guitar sound is on a lot of these records. Money Made is a fun one. Work, money made, just a fun, catchy AC/DC one. A personal favorite off the record for me, Rock and Roll Dream. I love the way it starts off kind of slow. This was, I believe, on my AC/DC 10 deep cuts. I'm pretty sure I put this one on there. There's a really cool part where it goes into the bomb, and Phil Rudd does this the big drum fill, and his drums sound great on this record. Really punchy. Again, the mix, not the mix, the mastering, the compression and the harshness. It's a little too bright, and at times the snare, at times to me even sounds a little bit like it's distorting or something. I don't know if it's just the overall EQ on the mastering or whatever. If this album was just mixed more like their 70s and 80s stuff with a warmer sound, man, these songs would have punched a lot harder for me. But as it stands, they still rock really hard here. And this is a good example of one here, Rock and Roll Dream, where the drums sound great on this. I love Angus has you can live in a rock and roll dream. He plays this lick that reminds me of the main lick in Have a Drink on Me. So then the other problem I have with this record, I just went through 10 songs on there. These are the 10 songs that are my favorite songs on here that I like the best. And there's another 5 songs. To me, that is too much. They should have trimmed this down to 10 songs. It would have been a lot tighter, a lot more focused. I left out Smash and Grab, Spoiling for a Fight. That's kind of a fun one. She Likes Rock and Roll. It's okay. Rockin' All the Way. Black Ice is kind of cool. It's the last song on the record, the title track. But for me, those songs are, they're just kind of like okay. They feel a little bit like filler. And this is something that really plagued the last so many AC/DC records for me. Stiff Upper Lip and Ball Breaker and Blow Up Your Video. And there's just, it always just feels like there's too many fillers on the record. And in this album, if they had just trimmed out 4 or 5 songs, I think it could have been a lot tighter, a lot more focused. So, but like I said, when it came out, it felt like I like this record better than Stiff Upper Lip and Ball Breaker. I would even say I like it better than Blow Up Your Video. I'm not sure about the Razor's Edge. I'd have to think about that. But for me, really, Brian's voice is back, which makes it much easier for me to listen to this. I like where his voice is at, and it would pretty much stay there on the next record. He sounds good too. So it was a nice return to form. It got me really excited about AC/DC again. I've listened to this record a lot. If I had to give it a rating, I might give it an 8 out of 10. I'm not going to hold the production against them if they had cut out a little bit of the filler. But overall, it's a fun AC/DC record, and it really got me engaged in the band again. And it seemed like it brought them back to sort of into the 2000s, if you will, and got them back into the public eye. I know they toured a lot for this. There's a great Live at River Plate video where I mentioned Rock and Roll Train earlier. The first song on the album, they open up the River Plate show with Rock and Roll Train, and man, if you've never seen that video, there is, I don't know how many people there are, but there just looks like there's like 50,000 people in this massive arena, and the crowd is just going absolutely bananas, and the chorus in that song is so great, and listening to everybody sing along with that is just so super cool. So alright, so I've just been getting psyched for the new AC/DC record. I've heard this sort of Shot in the Dark, the lead-off song, and I think it sounds pretty good. The more I've listened to it, the more I liked it. So I'm getting excited here. So let's just do this here. We're going to do this here next Friday. We'll cover the next album, and then we'll have the new AC/DC album coming up. So, all right, so we're getting ready for the new AC/DC here. Let me know what you think of Black Ice. What did you think when it came out? Like I said, they had been away for a little bit, and this album got a lot of attention, it seemed, in the press and the way they promoted it and everything. Brendan O'Brien seems to have started sort of a new chapter for the band, and he's who they've used now to produce the next album, and I believe he's the producer on Power Up too. So it seems like they've found a nice, comfortable, they like working with him. So let me know what you think of Black Ice, and make sure you hit like and subscribe, and until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.